Okay, hello everyone. In this video, we'll just pick up right where we left off from the previous video where we explored the bank churners dataset. And now what we'll do is we'll take a few minutes to prepare this data for use in our data mining analysis. Now, there are a number of transformations that we could perform, but what I'm going to focus on in this particular video is the transformation of our alphanumeric categorical values. We're going to transform those into numerical values. Some data mining algorithms can, such as logistic regression, can only work with numbers. And so having data that currently has has things like our target field as a character string aren't really going to work so well if we try to work with the data in certain algorithms. So we're going to convert all of the categorical alpha numeric values into numeric values. And we'll do that in one of two ways. Where we have nominal data, we will create what are called dummy variables. So we can create discrete binary variables that represent each of the category values for our nominal fields. And then for our ordinal categories that have alphanumeric values, we'll look at creating what are known as category scores. So there we'll still maintain a single field, but we'll have a range of discrete values that represent the different values that could be contained, or the different categories, labels within the category in the data set. And then that's kind of where we'll leave it. We could go a step further where, again, some algorithms are limited by the number of unique category values they could have, or discrete values. So we could go a step further and look at some of the fields and bin those as well. So for example, even though customer age is a numeric type, we might look at binning the customer age in groups of ranges of 5. So again, we know our min age is 26, so maybe we bin from 26 to 31, 30, etc. And then we have a fewer number of binned category values that we could use in an algorithm. So that's another thing that we could look at when it comes to preparing the data, but I'll leave that as a separate exercise. So coming back to the data set again. The link to the data set, if you don't have it, I'll include in the description, but it's a data set from Kaggle, so you could sign in there and download it, no problem. But I'm going to continue working from where we left off, like I said in the previous video, where we had spent some time exploring the video in Excel. And so staying away from the exploration tabs, I had originally copied the original data to a data explored worksheet where we could mess around with it and add additional fields and transform things if necessary. And here I want to do the same thing. I want to keep the original data in the format that it was when I received it. So I'm going to copy the original bank churners worksheet to a new worksheet. I'll call that data prep, and then we can begin the process. It's going to be a lot of kind of wash, rinse, and repeat, because once we've done the transformation for one nominal category or field over one ordinal category field, it's kind of like the same. But once we get the hang of it, it should go fairly quickly. So let's dig into it here. So I've got the bank churners tab. I'm going to move for copy, and I'm going to create a copy, and we'll just move that after bank churners. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so there we go. So I'm just going to rename this worksheet from bank churners 2 to data prep, so that I know that that's my prepared data. And so now it's just a matter of, again, having a look at our various fields and identifying where we have non-numeric field values. So this is kind of the important one. The attrition flag, this is our target. This is the label we're going to classify for. So one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at binary classifications is we're really looking for a field that has a value of either 1 or 0. So 1 to identify the label and a 0 to kind of falsify the label. And when we're dealing with category values, we don't need to represent all possible values that could exist for the field. Because if we, for example, we have 2 known values that we could have for the attrition flag. If we create an attrition field, which has a 1 if it's an attrited customer, or 0, and then we also create an existing field where the opposite is true, that just becomes redundant. Right? And so what I mean is, if we create one single field that represents attrition with either 1s or 0s, well, we know that where there is a 1, that's an attrited customer. And where there's a 0, it must be an existing customer. There's no reason to have two fields for the two values. And we'll see that same pattern play out when we look at the remaining fields that are in the data set. So let's begin with the attrition flag. I'm going to go right beside it here, and I'm going to insert a new field. And I'm going to name this attrited, because that's what we're looking for. And so here now, this is going to take on a numeric value, right? Again, so the purpose here is to get away from the alphanumeric values and convert those into numeric values. And so we can just use, again, our Excel functions to do that for us. So this is going to be equal to if the attrition flag value is equal to attrited customer, then I want a value of 1 in there, and if not, I want a 0. And so, of course, it's existing. Our first attrited customer is down here in row 23. If we copy that down through, we should see that we end up with 1s where we have attrited customers and 0 everywhere else. And so this is what I was alluding to. There's no reason to now create a second existing customer field. This one single field captures both the existing customers where we have 0s and our attrited customers where we have the 1s. And so we'll see that again play out with the remaining category labels. So for anything else that's like this, it's like a binary field. So for example, gender, that's how we can proceed. So we can just choose one gender. So we'll choose, for example, let's say F. We'll just have a column that represents F as either 1 or 0, and that's it. We don't need a column for M. We can just carry on. So we'll do that for these two. And then when we get to something like education level, which is a little bit different, we'll talk about how to treat that. What I'm going to do here as well is, because I don't like the functions or the formulas here, I want the actual values. Again, I'm just going to highlight that entire field. I'm going to copy it, and we'll do a paste special values so that now the values are stored in there. At the end of the day, I might want to just save this as a comma separated values file. And so I don't want to worry about having functions in there that could be updated or altered, as I click around in the spreadsheet. I like to deal with the actual hard values in these fields. So let's move on. Customer age is fine. It's numeric. Again, we could talk about binning it, but we'll leave it for now. Gender is our next one. So again, beside that, we're going to insert a new column. I'm just going to call it F, and same kind of idea. This is equal to if the gender has a value of F. I want a 1, otherwise I want a 0. And we can kind of copy that down. Copy, and then again, we will do a paste special values. And so you can see this can go pretty quickly for some of these binary fields. So, and again, notice here, we've still captured the same data, but now we've got it in a format that, all algorithms can understand. We've got it in terms of numbers. It's a bit easier to work with. So let's move on. Dependent count, that's pretty discrete already. Education level is our next one. So this is a little bit different. So here again, we have a categorical field, but this is not what I would say a nominal field. This is an ordinal field. So for example, you cannot be in graduate school unless you first come out of college, and you cannot be in college unless you first come out of high school. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but that's the way that we could treat it. So rather than creating a dummy variable for each of these, I'm going to create a category score to rank these from lowest to highest. So again, beside H, we can insert a new field, and I'm going to call this education level scores, or just call it score. And so here we need to take into account that there are a number of different values. When we were doing our exploration last time, we found that these were the values we have: unknown, uneducated, high school, college, graduate, postgraduate, and doctorate. So those are the ones that we want to account for. And we can do that in much the same way that we had done the previous columnar manipulations. So here, this is going to take a little bit of time, but basically we want to say, it's going to be this big nested if statement. So we got to type this in right. If we make some mistakes, we can edit it. But here we go. I'm going to update my formula box to make it a bit larger. This is equal to if the education level is equal to, and I'm going to begin with the lowest. So let's just assume that unknown, if it's equal to unknown, then the score should be a 0. Else, I have another if. If H2 is equal to, we have uneducated, then that should get a score of 1. And if not, we have another if. So else if H2 is equal to high school, then I want a 2. And if not, else, I say if again. If H2 is equal to college, comes after high school, then I want a 3. Else, I have another if. H2 is equal to graduate, then I want a 4. Else, I have another if. H2 is equal to post hyphen graduate, then I want a 5. And now, because there's only one category left, which is the 6, I can just say that it'll have a 6 otherwise. And now we can just close up those parentheses. I'm going to click in the formula field to make sure I close them all correctly. I think that's it. And if you have too many or not enough, it'll complain and say, hey, there's a problem. So this is what I was saying earlier. You got to be careful when you type these things in. So let's just go back for the beginning. If H2 is unknown, 0, else I have an if. H2 equals uneducated. There's a purple. Else, then we got blue, then another red. There, I'm missing a double quotes. There we go. So there we go. Now I can see it's closing up all the way out through the white one. Hit enter, and there we go. So double check your formulas. I made a mistake by missing the end quote, but it's going to look something like that. And so now, assuming this is right, I should be able to just copy this down and then have those scores associated. So again, now because I'm adding additional values here to align with the categories themselves, I might want to go back to my data dictionary and update it, but I'm going to leave that out for now, just recognizing that we're going through a preparation stage here. So I might want to do some double checking. So high school, right? 0 is unknown, 1 is uneducated, 2 is high school, so that's correct. 3 would be college, 4 would be graduate, postgraduate should be 5, there we go, and 6 for doctorate. So it looks like everything there is fine. I'm going to do like we did before, and oops, I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to copy, and we can paste special values. And so now we have ordinal scores for the education level. So we've converted these alphanumeric values into numeric values. Again, they can be used with any algorithm. Marital status. This is similar but different. Okay, so in education level, we had multiple category values, but they were ordinal, in implying that there was some kind of a priority to those values. But in terms of marital status, there is not really any kind of implicit order to these things. Someone can be married, single. I mean, in order to be divorced, you would first have to be married, and then you might say, well, in order to be married, you would first have to be single, but you could be remarried after divorce. So I'm going to treat this as a nominal field. And so what we need to do here is, because we can't just, like we did with the binary fields like F, or for gender, where we just had 1, here we have more than one value. So we apply that same reasoning. So we identify all the different values we have. So we have unknown, we have single, we have married, we have divorced. So I think we just have those 4. We need to create 3 new columns, 3 new fields. Okay, and I'll explain how the 3 works. And you say, why don't we have 4? Why wouldn't we create a column for each one? And it's because of the same logic that we applied for the gender field. So beside marital status, I'm going to insert 1, 2, 3 fields. And instead of a marital status, I'm going to have, let's have single, married, and divorced. We won't create a column for unknown. We'll take that as the default, right? So what we're going to say here is that if someone is, for example, married, I'll just do this manually for a moment, they would have a 1 here. So they're not single and they're not divorced. But where someone is unknown, they're not single, they're not married, they're not divorced. So you can see by having zeros in all 3, that implies that we don't know their marital status. We don't need another column that has a 1 in it. It's implied that would be the case by this combination of values. So it's almost like this encodes for unknown. So for these 3 fields, where I have a 0, 0, 0, that's unknown. Where I have a 0, 1, 0, that's married. And so we don't need the fourth column. It becomes redundant. There's nothing wrong with adding it. We could add a fourth unknown marital status column. It just doesn't add anything. So why do the work? So that's how that looks. I'm going to delete these. And again, I don't want to go one by one entering these values. So we can do something very similar to what we had done here. So in the gender for the F column. So here we can say this is equal to if the marital status, equals if marital status equals single, then I want a 1. Otherwise, I want a 0. And that's it. And then I can just take this, again, copy it, paste it here, and now instead of single, I'm looking for married. And here, I can paste it, and we can look for divorced. Yeah. Okay, and so now that we have those three, we can highlight them. We can use the flash fill to fill those columns. And we can see here, so married, 0, 1, 0. We have single, 1, 0, 0. Let's find a divorced. There we go, 0, 0, 1. And unknown is 3, 0. So this looks good. I'm going to copy and paste special values. Okay, and we just proceed in this fashion to go through all the categorical variables until we've prepared this data for analysis. So we've got 2 more to go here. We've got the income category and card category. Income category, again, this is an example of what I would say is an ordinal field. So we see the values we have here. We have unknown. So we could have an unknown. I'll treat that as a 0. And then we have less than 40K, which would be a 1, 40 to 60, which would be 2, 60 to 83, 80 to 120, and then 120 plus. So we can assign ordinal values to those. So this is going to be another scores field. So let's insert. And here we can have income category score and proceed in the same way that we did for the previous category score. So this is going to be equal if the income category is equal to unknown, then I want a 0. Else, if the income category is equal to, what did we have? We have less than 40K, then I want a 1. Else, if the income category is equal to, we have 40K to 60K, then I want a 2. Else, if the income category is equal to, now we just go up, so 60K to 80K. Yeah, that's right. Just looking at my values here, then I want a 3. Else, if my income category is equal to 80K to 120K, then I want a 4. And like we've seen before, if it's none of these values, then it has to be the 120K plus. So else we just put a 5 in there. We can close this up. There we go. Hit enter. And we can kind of just use the fill handle to fill it down. So unknown, I would expect to see a 0. There it is. Less than 40 is a 1. 40 to 60 should be a 2. 60 to 80 is my 3. 80 to 120 is a 4. And then 5 for 120 plus. So I can see that those scores align properly with the category values. I'm going to highlight this, copy, and paste special values. And that's that. Okay, so it looks like just scrolling along here. Yeah, the rest of these are continuous and numeric. That's fine. We have one more to go, which is just our card category. So let's get this one. Now here's one, again, that's kind of tricky, and I think you could play it either way, or it would pay to have a subject matter expert available. You could ask and say, looking at these card categories, we have blue, silver, gold, and platinum. Are those nominal values? Or are they ordinal? Is one kind of greater than the next? And it's not obvious to me that that is the case. So I'm going to actually treat these as nominal values, not ordinal. So I'm going to create a dummy variable for, again, we have 4 cards. So I'm going to create a dummy variable for 3 of them, and I'll take blue as the default. That's our most common. So I'll treat the silver, gold, and platinum as the dummy variables that I want to account for. If there are zeros in each of those, then I know that it was a blue card. So again, here we can insert 1, 2, and 3 fields. And so here we're going to have, I'll have silver card, I'll have gold card, and we'll have platinum card. Again, I'm not going to have a blue card field because that will be the default. So here we can say this is equal to if the card category equals silver, then I want a 1. Otherwise, I want a 0. And that's that. I'm going to copy this formula and I'm going to paste it here. So this becomes gold. I want a 1 if not a 0. And I'm going to paste it here. And this becomes platinum. I want a 1, not a 0. And then we can highlight these, use the fill handle to fill. And then, so blues, all zeros. We have a gold. That's aligning up properly. I have a silver and no platinums here. They're very rare, but I feel pretty confident if we scroll down far enough, we'll find one. Or just trust that they're in there somewhere. There we go. I see a couple. So platinum, there we go. So I'm happy. I'm convinced that this is working. Again, one final time, I'm going to copy those cells and I'm going to paste special values. And now we're good to go. So I'm going to save this. And again, that's kind of what we need to do here. In some cases, you might find that it's helpful to reduce the number of categories. In some cases, sometimes you'll want to take several fields and somehow combine them to create a new field. Or like I mentioned, in some cases where you have continuous or discrete values, it could even be, for example, credit limits. We might look at binning those up. So instead of having all these different values, maybe we have 10 different bins or something like that. So depending on the algorithm that you plan on using, that'll somewhat dictate how you prepare your data. But one of the things that I try to do is just convert everything to numbers because I know that machines have an easier time with numbers, and it also forces me to spend more time with the data so that I also get to get a better understanding of what I'm dealing with by staring at it a bit longer. So as far as preparing the data goes for this step, I think we're good. We can kind of leave it there. And so our next steps are going to be to save this out so that we can pull it into Orange, which is the software tool that we're going to use to perform our data mining. So when we get to that stage, we'll talk a little bit more about our different partitions. So training versus validation versus test or holdout. And we can cut this up a little bit then. But as for now, I think we've got it in a place where we're ready to roll with it. One thing you might find, and I'll just talk about this here, but I'll probably demonstrate it in the Orange video, is when it comes time to pull this spreadsheet into Orange, because we have pivot tables and pivot charts and a number of different sheets, sometimes that piece of software has difficulty pulling in the spreadsheets. So it might be helpful to save this prepared data to a CSV file format, so it's on its own and it doesn't come with all the additional baggage that the Excel workbook has. But yeah, as far as the data preparation and Excel piece goes, I think we've pretty much nailed it here. If it turns out we've missed something or I've overlooked something, I'll pick it up again when we pull it into Orange. But otherwise, in the next video, what we'll do is basically look at the same things we've done here and in the previous video, but we'll duplicate our efforts by showing you how to do it in the Orange software tool. So the next video will be kind of starting from the beginning with that original bank churners set and just pulling it into Orange, exploring the data. So I'll show you how you can do much of what we did with Excel in Orange. And then we'll talk about how we can also use Orange to do some of these preparation steps that we've talked about here. So I'll say bye for now.